Yeah, I'm running out of time now. I'm going to talk to you about street pastors. I have the pleasure of being employed as a consultant actually by street pastors. I work one day a week for them on a range of things that I'm involved with. But I want to tell you about some of the stuff that actually goes on the streets by people who make a real difference. So I want you to close your eyes for me, please. Okay? And I want you to put yourself on the streets of Ryde, and if you don't know Ryde, on the streets of any busy town, on a Friday night, late at night, cold, dark, lots of noise, lots of pub overspill onto the streets, and I want you to imagine teenage girl towards the end of her teenage years, and lying on the ground, having been quite sick, having drunk too much. She's on her own, she hasn't got any of her friends with her. Okay? Now, you might instantly jump to decisions about that person, about what they've been doing, about what sort of person they are. Now I'd like to imagine that that's your daughter, your sister, somebody you know, perhaps somebody who's made a bad choice that night. Okay? And now I'd like you to picture that they're not there on their own, they're there with a street pastor cradling them in their arms as they wait for an ambulance to arrive. Okay, that street pastor is covered in that person's sick, and still they wait. And they wait all the way until that person is safely in an ambulance and off to safety. Okay? That's a description pretty much of this. You can open your eyes now. You might want to keep them closed because otherwise you have to look at me. But that's a description pretty much of one incident that's actually happened on the streets. Now, street pastors are all volunteers. Okay? They're out there on the streets on a Friday night. Each street pastor goes out once a month. They're there till 3 o'clock in the morning, giving their time voluntarily to engage in those sorts of situations. It could be anything from that to standing between two people who want to beat each other to a pulp. Okay? Now they don't directly engage in things that are dangerous or violent, but they are often in difficult places, and trying to bring love and peace into those difficult places without knowing the people, without knowing their situation, without judging them, and without trying to preach to them. Okay? That's what street pastors is all about, basically. It's about providing practical care to people that in society we tend to write off as people who have put themselves in the position they're in and aren't worthy of our care. And I'm down to 59 seconds. I just want to share a little bit of that sort of practical side of it. That is what is happening on the streets. Okay, street pastors coming to Newport soon. They should be on the streets of Newport from sort of May, June time. Okay, so that will mean there'll be 2 teams out each week. They'll keep growing. It does need your support in terms of your prayers, in terms of your cash. Okay, because it does cost quite a lot to keep the whole thing running, despite the fact that all the street pastors are volunteers. And yeah, it just needs people to be involved with it, engaged with it, and sort of with the agenda for street pastors. So I hope that people will back it, and when you're asked for support one way or another, that you'll lend your support.
Okay, so Martin and I with Dave, and also a pastor in Ryde, do run Cafe Church once a month. We run it in Thorntons, and the aim is that it's a place where people who are unchurched and de-churched can come and discuss spiritual things. By unchurched, we mean people who've never been to church, and by de-churched, we mean people who've been at church and for one reason or another have gone away. They don't like it, or they feel excluded, or whatever. Our topics are sometimes practical. The next topic is going to be on green living. And we've done a topic on money, which we're going to bring here in a couple of weeks. And but also sometimes fun. The last one we did was on Doctor Who, and you can guess it was Ryan who was speaking at that one. So we do a wide variety. We sometimes do more standard religious topics like love, but most of the time we're dealing with a practical topic, and we're bringing in some biblical basis for people to talk about. We do this by having a speaker who can be an expert witness on the subject, who may or may not be a Christian. When we did health and well-being, we had all the local health trainers come and talk. We normally have somebody who's got some sort of practical experience giving a personal testimony. We have a quiz at the beginning where the prizes are lots and lots of chocolate, and that's always very, very popular. And then we finish by having a discussion sheet. And quite often, that's the point where you've got the Christian content. Sometimes the talk hasn't got any, sometimes it's got lots. It depends on how the subject goes. And you've got your sheet that people then talk about, and they're normally with their friends, so they feel quite comfortable and relaxed, and this gives them a focus for their conversation about the topics. We try and give very open-ended questions so that there's no right or wrong answer, but people can talk about how their experiences relate to what they've just read from the Bible and what people have said. So, for example, when we did love, we spoke on the love passage from 1 Corinthians 13, which talks about love in amazing terms and being very difficult to actually live up to. And so our question was, can you live up to this discussion, this description of love? If you can't, what's the point? So it's very open questions. You know, you don't have to be a Christian to be able to relate to these types of questions. The discussions go on for a long time. We often have people say, well, we were talking about that all the way home in the car, we were still talking about it. So people obviously get a lot out of it. I'd also like to say, how much time have I got? Yes. So on the subject we did about money, Martin and I have spent a long time working on budgeting. We've often not had very much money, and we've spent a lot of years getting our finances sorted out. And so we were quite happy to do that topic, and we want to give people lots of practical things to think about, you know, and we wanted to make it quite amusing as well. And so we ended up with a very scripted piece of work. And then it happened that my friend, whose children I was looking after through the day, was taken ill and taken into hospital. And I had to look after her children. Her children were with me, and her need was greater than any need I had to be a cafe church. But because we had completely scripted what we had done, Martin was able to go with Rebecca and the pastor from Ride Eden, Paul Meredith, and do that talk because we'd written it down. Some of it was a little bit strange because we talked about, you know, my husband. So when Paul Meredith stood there and referred to Martin as my husband, that raised a little smile.
That's the next one.
But you know, we were able to do that, I felt, because we'd done the preparation, yeah, and because I felt that God was in that. God knew that I was going to be needed somewhere else. But I would say that, in my opinion, the more important job was looking after my friends' children. I think the small things of caring for each other can be far more important than the standing up here leading things. Yeah, that's what I'm going to finish with.
Perfect.